All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our top 5 series for Ryerson's alumni and friends. My name is Krishan Mehta, and I'm the AVP of Engagement at the university. Before I introduce our presenters to you, I want to pay my respects to the Indigenous peoples, elders, and ancestors who stewarded and cared for the nature and people who lived on the land that was taken from them and where Ryerson is located today. At the university, we've made important commitments to reconciliation and decolonization, and I invite you to learn more about this work online and in person next time we can get together on campus. We know you've got a lot on the go, so this is just a 30-minute webinar. Before we start, I have a few housekeeping tips to share. In about 20 minutes, our presenters will be taking your questions. If you want to ask them something, please add your question to Zoom's Q&A area. Your cameras and mics are off, so I'll be selecting questions from there. We're also recording this session, so if you want to rewatch it or share it with your friends, family, networks, please look for a message from us in your inbox over the next day or two. And if you're into hashtags, please use hashtag RUTop5. Okay, so on to today's speakers. Robin Kang is a digital media and communications specialist and has spearheaded a range of online and offline advocacy campaigns under the Association for Ontario Midwives and for the Ontario Public Health Association. She is currently working with Ryerson's first-year engineering office as a transition facilitator to convert in-person programming materials into virtual formats for the upcoming semester as the current pandemic affected the organization's educational delivery strategy. Robin is currently pursuing the Master of Digital Media degree at Ryerson and with a special focus on esports. Geoffrey Lachapelle, where are you, Geoffrey? Hello, is a media creator, educator, and entrepreneur. He has worked on live-to-tape web shows, game design projects, and full-length documentaries. His most recent project, The Artist, is currently on CBC Gem and the Doc Channel and won the Canadian Screen Award for Best Online Series. That's awesome. His next series is seeking to highlight the history of esports internationally and in Canada. Geoffrey is the Director of Operations at Humber College Esports, the first varsity sports styled association of its kind. He is also the co-founder of IQ Esports, a company that seeks to leverage video games as a teaching tool for high school students and beyond. He is also completing his master's, this time in media production at Ryerson. And finally, Dr. Kris Alexander, who earned his PhD at Concordia, and his research focuses on video games, specifically how video game design and esports infrastructure provide models for developing active engagement within higher ed. Most recently, Dr. Alexander has undertaken research creation in the area of esports, where he developed curriculum for video game engine architecture and helped build esports infrastructure via 2 training facilities and 8 collegiate esports teams. Furthermore, Dr. Alexander is currently developing his own video game, which will embody his research in audience engagement via interactivity. So, this is a great panel we've got for you. We're going to start with Robin. She's going to introduce the topic to us. Robin, over to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi there, I'm Robin Kang, and I'm a current graduate student at Ryerson's Master of Digital Media program. My current research project is looking at esports coaches and their professional identity. But before I go there, I want to set the stage for you on what Ryerson Esports is like. When I began my semester back in the fall, I right away looked for the Ryerson Esports Club because I knew that the collegiate esports scene is like no other, and you can only be in this scene if you are a student. So what does collegiate esport look like? Well, at Ryerson, there are 2 streams where you can be involved, and one of them is at the competitive level. So this means you have a game you like, and at the beginning of the term, competitive teams will hold tryouts so that only the most skillful players can represent the team throughout the year. And this is very exciting for students especially, because unlike high school, where high school esports scene is still in development, so there isn't a lot of tournaments or official competitions. Once you enter the collegiate scene, there are huge tournaments going on that involves prize money and against schools across North America. So sometimes your team might be going against your neighboring schools. So for Ryerson, U of T, York, Waterloo. But other times, most of the times, you are competing against someone across the country, across the border. And it could be UCLA, Texas, UPenn. And it's exciting. And like sports, you and your teammates are representing your school and you're winning, your team going up the ranks. And it's not just a game anymore, it's a competition. So that's the competitive level. And on the other stream we have available at Ryerson is more of a casual, recreational, social esports club where you don't have to be the most skillful player, but you just enjoy the game and you want to just play with your fellow peers. And this group is also a huge community at Ryerson, where the club only began a couple years ago, and it right away started off with 40 or so members. And the year after that, we're in the 300s, and currently we're close to 1,000 members. So sometimes it's not just about the competition, it's a social activity where you meet fellow peers who you may have never met because you're in a different program, you're in a different year, but you share the same game interest. So taking a step back and not just looking at Ryerson, in Ontario, there are only 4 schools that developed an esports program, which has infrastructure with policies, staff, and a gaming center. And these are the Durham College, Lambton, St. Clair, Humber. So that's only 4 in Ontario. Whereas if we look down to the states, and we take Ohio State, they have 30 schools with an esports program. And this development actually happened very suddenly when they noticed back in 2018-19 during open houses, high school kids will ask, so what's your esports program like? And when they said they didn't have one, some kids actually literally just walked out from that tour. So schools understood right away the importance of having an esports program for the incoming students. So taking it back to Ryerson and the collegiate scene in Canada in general, we are behind than the US, and sooner or later we'll be seeing better, stronger esports infrastructure from player development and forming teams. But not only that, we have broadcasting, streaming, shoutcasting, esports management, coaching, health studies, and so on and so forth. And today, I think we are all here to take a step closer to that dream.
Wonderful. Incredible, Robin, as always. Yo, Geoffrey,
yeah,
you ready, man?
I think I'm up. Yeah.
Go,
Seeing if everyone do the tee up. All right. So, hi, my name's Geoffrey Lachapelle. We already got a pretty stellar introduction. And Robin's absolutely right. The objective in everything we're hoping to do with today and in general with our careers is trying to build better framework for esports, video games in general, at the academic level, at the institutional level, or just in general. And that's been the thrust of a lot of the work that I've been doing, is at the infrastructural level, working with schools, working with businesses through either film production, infrastructure development, or academia to try and create better frameworks for schools and students to grapple with esports. There was talk about the different schools that have built esports programs. Well, with the help of a certain brilliant doctor named Kris Alexander, we built what is going on at Humber, which is a very high-performance collegiate competitive team. As recently as a couple of weeks ago, won a $25,000 tournament in TESPA for Call of Duty.
Wait a second. Did you say 25,000 students are winning money, Geoffrey?
In fact, Christopher, each of those 5 students took home $3,500. So
amazing.
This could actually be a career. This could be something that students could do and, make money in, which I know might sound crazy to some, but this is the world we're in. And so even as we stand right now, one of the projects that I'm working on is a new documentary that's dedicated towards understanding the arc of that story and the arc of how we went from, some kids playing with locally connected computers in a basement back in 1994 to the multiple million live viewers and $50 million tournaments that are going on at the top tier competitive level. Because if you think $3,500 for college students is crazy, there are tournaments going on that have happened year after year after year where individual players walk away with more than $1 million in prizing for first place. So bringing the spotlight to what this industry can be and what can be done in this industry is huge. And also addressing the misconceptions in it. My master's paper right now is dedicated towards understanding why we don't spend more time with video games in the industry. I mean, video games are 50, 60 years old now. By this time in the film industry, we had entire universities, programs dedicated towards that. And I think there are a lot of serious issues that have put video games behind, but we need to address them, which is the subject of my master's paper, how we address them and what those particular issues are. And then finally, and probably the thing that I'm most excited about are the two companies that I've been working on to try and affect this change. The first of which, and the one that's really moving full steam ahead, is a company called IQ Esports. And that company is sort of, with what Kris and I have developed at Humber, partially it's taking that into a more professional sphere, but we're going way beyond that. What IQ does is it works with government, it works with institutions, different colleges and universities, and it works with individual companies and parents to run educational programming at the high school and the collegiate level for students to be able to learn or create supplemental learning that uses video games as the teaching methodology. Because at the end of the day, video games are a highly interactive, rewards-based system that can make learning extremely effective and very engaging for students who are used to working in a games environment these days. And so we can teach things like mathematics, English, and all kinds of other things like team building and socialization like you would have in a basketball camp by using video games as that delivery method. And we do summer camps, school education, and more through that. And then lastly, because I'm not, I get bored from time to time, I'm not busy enough. The last thing I'm working on is trying to develop a traveling museum that can allow for people to engage with video games in a way that is educational, that allows them to get access into that sort of history of what games are, people who may not have been involved with games for very long or at all, and give them that access. Because one of the problems I think as a community of gamers is that it can be very hard to access our community if you don't already play games. And that can be difficult for people to engage with. And so the hope is that by creating a museum that shows especially people who have never engaged with a video game before, how we got to VR and 4K and all these other crazy aspects of video games these days, and give them that access point from Mario to the Oculus, we can create a better access point to allow people to get into this art medium. Because I think that is really what we have to come to terms with it being, is a very compelling and very exciting art medium. Look at that, right at 5 minutes.
Whoa!
I got to give that to you, Kris, because I think you can bring us home.
Okay, so what I love about what Robin and Geoffrey has said is what we're doing is really just education. There are a lot of humans that are nervous about video games. Geoffrey talks about substantiating why. Robin talks about what's going on externally, abroad, and even in the post-secondary sphere. My main goal is research. And a lot of my research teases out esport infrastructure and wants to substantiate the integration of video games and esports into curriculum via student perspectives. For example, the most recent study that has gone out, we're looking to poll the entire Ryerson body of 40,000 students to find out what games they play and what programs they're from, so that we can start to draw both curricular as well as infrastructural, to go back to what Robin was talking about, ties to what they're in school for. For example, I'm currently working on a course called Virtual Fashion, where we're talking to the fashion department about how their practice manifests itself in video games, not just for fun, but because those are actual jobs in the field. If we're looking at things like project management, it would be useful to integrate how video games deal with project management, not just for fun, but because those lead to actual jobs. Because we know that the job market in North America has gone up 18%, totaling roughly 48,000 jobs in video games, including esports. And that's a study from the ESAC, the Electronic Standards Association of Canada, just for those of you who didn't know. So we know that there is a demographic of humans in our school aged 18 to 35 who play video games, because that's currently the average age. It's starting to increase, obviously, because we're all getting older, but there is a golden opportunity for research substantiation, as well as curricular ties and vocational congruence to what they're taking in school. Now, I know I was supposed to have 5 minutes, but I think I covered it right there. What y'all think? I think we should stop and get ready for questions, man. But before we do that,
Wonderful.
Our favorite game is Can you all tell the groups what games you play, love, and have specialized in, just so that our community members can know, oh, yes, okay, I know that they get me. Robin, you want to start?
Yes, my first competitive game and going into the esports league actually was Overwatch.
Yeah.
And I don't know, some people hate it, some people love it, but I love it. And once I got the Switch, it's Animal Crossing now, and I'm just building my virtual world. Please come visit my island.
I will. I was just in the Toronto Star article talking about Animal Crossing. Geoffrey, let's do it.
So there's this running thing of everyone's been poking me about Halo Infinite coming out, and I am fainting over the trailer from yesterday because my background was always in competitive Halo as a kid. Part of my sort of chip on the shoulder is that when I was a professional in Halo, instead of walking away with $1 million, professional players could expect a white hot $30,000 a year. So I decided to go to university instead of, trying to go down the pro path. And nowadays, and so with the advent of Halo Infinite and the expansion of the community and the expansion of the industry, I'm very excited to see how that goes. Beyond that, I've also been a nationally ranked Magic the Gathering player before. And right now, Path of Exile is trying very hard to ruin my life.
So again, this is just demonstrative of scholars who are also video game players. Myself, I'm a globally ranked video game player in 2 video games. One is Street Fighter 3 Third Strike on the PlayStation Network with the worst character in the game. And the second one is a card game called Light Seekers. And a lot of what we are trying to build here at Ryerson is from our passion. We're trying to build infrastructure for what we know needs to exist, aligned with what humans are doing and are coming to school for. So I think that pretty much covers our talk. With 1 minute left to spare, should we open up the floor for questions? Because we always got a lot. Krishan, what do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so here's the first question. Robin, when you first opened us up, you talked about how Canada lags in esports and gaming in comparison to our friends down south. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can start us off, and Jeff, you also talked about it as well. Why is Canada behind? What's up? Okay, Dr. Alexander has a thought on this too. So we'll maybe all 3 of you.
Okay, you want me to drop the stat, Geoffrey and Robin? Is it time?
Yes, go for it, Kris.
Okay, folks.
Just get it over with. Here we go.
According to my research, the average age of the esports video game player and enthusiast is between the ages of 18 and 35. Now, in Canada, the average age, according to Statista, the average age of the full-time faculty member across all post-secondary institutions who would have the ability to create infrastructure, build programming, and talk about the things that we're talking about here, the timer is up, is 51 years of age. And what you're seeing there is a potential disconnect between the community that plays games and the humans that need to think about bridging that gap. So that could be one reason. I'm not sure. I'm just talking about the data.
It's definitely a factor. And I think part of the issue is that while the same problem is going on in the States, something that's very key and something that I'm sure every university administrator pulls their hair out over is the fact that United States schools, especially the big Ivy League schools, just have more weight to throw around. And so even though that divide in age gap and all of that is still a thing, it's much easier for a school in the US to just do the experiment, throw some money into an experiment, hire a couple of staff and say, okay, here's your corner. We're going to get you this little building, buy some computers, go give it a try. And you'll find that once you can get the schools that hired the right person, that bring in the right students, just given a little bit of momentum, a ton comes in under that. And you can see that at a bunch of the really strong schools, particularly UCI is one of the bigger schools that really went in on it. And they've had a ton of success just by being the school that had a little bit of belief and was willing to put some serious investment into the infrastructure. They ran away with it. And even though they were not the first school to do it, because of their proximity to Silicon Valley and the amount of resources they put into it, within a very short time period, they were at the GDC, they were at the Game Developers Conference, they were at every major conference speaking about esports with authority, simply because they had built the largest of these infrastructures.
My favorite response is from you, Robin, though. Come on, if you want to get into it, please.
Oh my goodness. I don't like the state schools, they like to experiment and they just go in there blindly. Some schools have it under their athletic department. Some schools have it under their social. And yeah, they just like to do a little risk and put it out there and expect very little. So for instance, in the sports department, some of the schools, recruitment, that's why they have these programs, it's to recruit new students in. And honestly, when I was talking to esports coaches, they said other sports, like other members of the faculty told them, like, we for sure thought you're going to fail. We for sure thought you'll only get 2 or 3 students. But once because of the esports program and start bringing in 30 students per year, then it's like, okay, we see where this is going. And then they start putting more money in. Whereas I'm not sure about Canada, where if they really want to place in more structure, procedures, and see some results from other schools first, and then they will like to invest. So I think it's a number of things.
Yeah, and this might invite further questions, but I think part of the challenge too is that Canada's had a very, there's been very rigid rules about varsity sports in Canada a lot of the time in participation. And so part of my concern is that a lot of schools are hanging back from going too deep in case this is turned into a varsity sport and suddenly all the rules change.
Yeah. So,
well, sorry, go ahead, Kris.
Oh, go ahead, Krishan. I was wondering if you're reading from the question and answer box, because I was about to take a couple, but if you're reading from the same thing, let you do your thing.
Well, yeah, actually, I wanted to combine 2 questions. One is the last one in the Q&A about stigma and stigma associated with gaming. All right. And, how does that play into the industry and education? But also, how does that connect to an understanding about, or lack of understanding about, the relationship between mental health and virtual gaming? Who wants to take it first? This is a big one.
Go ahead, Geoffrey.
I absolutely do, because this is, oh my God, what has happened to me? Okay, I'm just turning my virtual background off. I was feeling so
I like it. Leave it.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay,
it's a cool
psychedelic,
effect, man.
It's psychedelic. People pay attention. So I'm excited to tackle this one because this is literally the predication of my master's thesis, is understanding what happens to the industry when what has happened to the industry, and that there is so much stigma. Where does the stigma come from? And while there's a lot of it, a lot of different sources, the biggest one doesn't actually come from video games. It comes from a particular game you may have heard of called Dungeons and Dragons. And what happened was, in the 1980s, you had a huge surge in particular, especially very religious households, building into something that has been colloquially called the moral panic, which is essentially a bunch of parents who were very religious found out that Dungeons and Dragons is a game where people fantasize about casting spells and summoning demons. And if you are a very fundamentally conservative person, this might not sound like the best activity for your children to be partaking in. Fast forward a couple of more years, and then a game like Mortal Kombat comes out, where people are not so much fantasizing about violence as simulating it.
Right.
That has led to that led in the 80s and the 90s to a huge campaign to restrict access to video games because parents were afraid this was some kind of simulator for violence. Foregoing completely the fact that, on a 7 o'clock evening, or an evening on Thursday night at 7 o'clock, you can turn on the television and watch a movie on Showcase that has as much, if not more, gratuitous violence, like the movie Predator.
Right.
Where an alien is fighting Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's incredibly violent, but people focused on video games as a huge source of violence. And the other side of it was, there's been an increase in very tragic events around shootings and things like that have been in no small part thanks to people like Michael Moore, his movie Bowling for Columbine, and the efforts of many parents and lawyers, like a certain person named Jack Thompson, who I will point out is now disbarred as a lawyer. Great person to read about. Video games have taken on a massive stigma as a source of encouraged violence in youth.
Wow.
And what also, just to tackle on that, you got to think about it from a demographic standpoint. If somebody does not play video games and you explain to them that in this moment, right now in real time, there are at least 19,000 people watching one person in their basement play a video game, and you know about television and film, that could be frightening. So much so that's like, nah, I can't believe that. But then you go to Twitch and you look at it, what does this mean, right? There's a lot of that. And the stigma that Geoffrey mentioned, it's a tough one to shake. That's part of the reason why I had the three of us talk about the video games we play, because now you're saying, well, hold on a second. You have 3 competitive video game players, 2 master's students, and a PhD. Wait a second. It means that if you play video games, you could turn out all right. So we're actually trying to dismantle some of those stigmas. And I got to be real, the pandemic has helped with that, because people have just been saying for a long time, oh yes, violence, violence, violence. But now I'm being approached by CNN, the National Post, CTV, Global News to talk about the other stuff. And people are finding out like, oh my goodness, there are some ties to education, delayed gratification inside of Animal Crossing for children. Wow, I didn't think about that. There are mathematics and finite and physics inside of League of Legends that we should be teasing out and incorporating as part of classroom instruction. Wow, I didn't know that. Oh my goodness, computer science is talking about quaternions and frustum culling and Ken Perlin's 3D noise. Wait a second, that stuff's in video games too. So now we're in this realm where education is coming up and people are like, whoa, this is a rich source to extract, because although video games are fun, the making of how it gets fun, a lot of that stuff are real world jobs. And once we can start talking about video games as a holistic medium, then we can start to break down some of those stigmas. Because you can't say, just like racism, not all video games are bad. There are games that talk about mental health. There are games that talk about racism. To get back to that comment about mental health, check out a game, please, called Depression Quest. Check out a game, please, called The Cat Lady. Check out a game, please, called
Celeste.
Check out a game, please, called
Greek.
Virginia. And there are tons of them. Braid, if you look into these games, you'll be like, whoa, I didn't know these games exist. But Robin, Geoffrey, and I, and all the other humans that are often going to be filling out our survey, they're aware that this exists as a medium. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer to your question. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does answer the, well, yeah, you've given, in fact, there are 3 other questions that I've got for you as a result of your response there. But Robin, do you want to weigh in on that? Is there anything else you want to add?
No, we can move on to the next question.
All right, so,
They did a
okay,
fantastic job.
so
Big chip on
Dr.
Kris and I's
Alexander,
shoulder.
You talked about this gap in age and understanding, from a demographic perspective, those who game are between the ages of 18 and 35, and those who teach tend to be much older. How do we get that older group to really adopt and embrace gaming and esports?
We had mentioned it from the beginning, and Robin mentioned it as well, and so did Geoffrey. Education is key. And you remember what Robin said, given a little bit of belief, a little bit, she said. That's accurate. Something like, listen, I don't understand this, but let me just try it. Now, I also have to talk about, it's tricky to know who to trust if you don't know the video games medium, right? So publishing studies like we're working on right now, publishing CBC programming, talking to coaches all around the states like Robin is doing. You talk to somebody like that and they tell you this, it might be easier. If somebody's coming in and wowing you with statistics, you should be comfortable saying, and you could do this for my discipline, how can video games relate to me? And we can help answer that question. I mentioned physics. I mentioned mental health. We mentioned fitness. We mentioned finite math. We mentioned, we didn't mention, but there's post-traumatic stress disorder training. We talked about electrician training in virtual reality. These things exist. Neonatal resuscitation, for example. All these things connect to video games, but it's about an openness to say, hey, listen, can you just tell me about my discipline? And then listening, because the news for a long time hasn't been giving you this type of information.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer that question? It's just openness.
Well, on that note, here we have 3 folks who are not just dedicated, but are leading the way in research and learning in this area, right? So if we were to look into the future, 10 years from now, what does esports and gaming look like in a classroom?
So, yeah, Robin, go for it.
Robin,
Okay.
over to you.
Well, I would like to see, what does a classroom mean? It's about research and learning and exploring. And you might think video games and esports, you're looking at just playing, but there's so many aspects to it surrounding it. So the social science understanding. So you could do more research on problematic gaming addiction, toxic online behavior. There's information technology with artificial intelligence, game mechanics. There's the business and management side to it. There's the media management with esports being so encompassed in the social media sphere. We could also go towards sports studies to look at team dynamics, online team dynamics, and healthcare, screen time, and mental health. So in the classroom setting, in just the academic setting in general, I see so many possibilities that's related to esports and gaming. All we just have to do is explore it a bit further.
Wow.
Fantastically put. Robin, I don't have anything to add to that. Genius.
One of the small thing to add is, and this might get you excited to go again, Kris, is when we were at Humber, one of the projects that we supervised, at least in part, was the creation of 2 virtual simulation programs. And these virtual simulations were educational programs that leveraged the VR space to train real-world skills, notably a paramedic emergency response triage program and an electrician training program. Here's the thing, with training emergency response for a medic, if you want to do a course, it takes hours, days to set up. And as soon as a paramedic has run through it, it can take days to reset it. But in a virtual environment, you can create as many jungle gyms as you want, and to reset it, you push one button.
Reset.
There it goes, done. And so it allowed for much more immersive, much more compelling, and much more efficient training for paramedics to handle the extremely stressful situation of there has been a metro crash and there are people who need your help and you have to go and triage 30 people as fast as you can.
And for the electricians, they were able to equip users in that space with a haptic vest that emitted subwoofer sounds so that when they got shocked in VR, they could feel that visceral results, because we know that we can help humans in simulation and training recall if we get them as close to, oh, whoa, be careful, because this is the result inside of a simulated environment. Now, it doesn't work for all disciplines, but it can work in many disciplines. And it does work. I had mentioned neonatal resuscitation, where they have a baby that has a USB cable out of it. You cut it, it can bleed. And they're using that to test. These are types of environments that use video game technology, game design, retention, cognition, all these things built into the crux of my dissertation, really, that we can be teasing out for your discipline. That's right. Whoever's listening, your discipline. Sound like a spokesperson for video games, but that's what it is.
I said it would get him excited again.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Jeff. Hey, listen, all 3 of you, thank you so much for being here with us today. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We will do this again because clearly we've got a lot more to talk about and a lot more educating to do. And how fortunate are we at Ryerson to have you here with us, both as faculty and staff and students and the rest. Like, it's just amazing to have your leadership and your expertise guiding our future on learning, and that's really important. So thank you to all of you who've joined us. Thank you for tuning in. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are recording this, so we will send it to you. Please share it widely, watch it again and again and again. There's a lot to absorb in this and a lot to do as a result. So we're really excited about the future of gaming and esports because of you, Dr. Alexander, Robin, and Jeff. We will be in touch, and look out for our fall programming for top 5 in your inbox in the near future as well. That's a great background, Dr. Alexander.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
Take good
Bye
care.
for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.